All right, I need everybody to sit down for this one because what I'm about to walk you through is going to have you questioning everything you thought you knew about Jim Carrey. And I mean everything. What if I told you that the Jim Carrey who showed up in Paris earlier this year to accept a Lifetime Achievement Award might not actually be Jim Carrey? What if the man who stood on that stage, smiled for the cameras, and gave a whole speech in French is not the same person who made us cry laughing in Ace Ventura and had us losing our minds in The Mask? Now, before you click off and say, here we go with another conspiracy, just hear me out. Because Joe Rogan has been talking about this. Plastic surgeons have weighed in. Body language experts have analyzed the footage frame by frame. A professional celebrity impersonator came forward and said that was literally him in a prosthetic mask at that ceremony.
Alexis Stone has publicly claimed that the man recently seen in Paris was actually him in full prosthetic disguise. The internet had already been spiraling over Jim Carrey's noticeably different appearance. Fans debated whether it was lighting, aging, cosmetic work, or something more unusual. Then Alexis Stone stepped in and said it outright. That wasn't Jim Carrey. It was him. For those unfamiliar, Alexis Stone is known for hyper-realistic celebrity transformations. He has built a reputation for appearing in public as famous figures using advanced prosthetics, makeup, and full-body character work. On his social platforms, he has documented multiple high-profile impersonations, not just photo shoots, but real-world appearances that blur the line between performance art and social experiment. This time, he posted what he says were the prosthetics used for the Jim Carrey look. The facial structure, skin texture, even...
I do not understand this Jim Carrey thing. It's not Jim Carrey. That is not Jim Carrey. That is not Jim Carrey, I'm sorry. And I don't get it, right? People have clocked on. The whole internet have clocked on that is not Jim Carrey. Since when does Jim Carrey know all that French? When did he have long hair? When were his eyes a different colour, bro? And the fact that when he went good afternoon, good evening, good night, and didn't do that nice little bow afterwards, bro, that's not Jim Carrey, I'm sorry. And what I don't understand is that the government know, right? Whoever's in charge, P. Diddy, whoever knows, right? Whoever made him not do that and do a different person, we know it's not Jim Carrey. Just come out and say, yeah, lads, it's not. All right? Like, what's the harm there? All right? Because I'm stressing right now. I'm stressing. I'm constantly thinking, what is going on? Is it Jim Carrey? Is it not? What? Just tell us, Mr. Government Man. Do a tweet on X or something. Just say, listen, all right, it wasn't Jim Carrey. We'll formally apologise. We thought we'd done a better job. We'll do better next time. And then everyone on the internet, everyone in the world can just relax.
And when you line up all the pieces, the timeline, the physical changes, the things Jim Carrey himself said publicly before he disappeared from the spotlight, it gets real uncomfortable real fast. So stay with me on this one. By the time we're done here, you're going to have a whole different perspective on what's really going on. Let's get into it. Before we get into the wild stuff, we need to go back and remember exactly who Jim Carrey was at his peak, because that context is everything. In the 1990s, Jim Carrey was not just famous, he was the biggest comedic actor alive, period. Ace Ventura came out in 1994, and the man became a household name overnight. Then The Mask dropped that same year, then Dumb and Dumber, then Liar Liar, then The Truman Show, which proved he could actually act, not just do comedy. By the time he did Man on the Moon in 1999 playing Andy Kaufman, this man was making $20 million a film. $20 million in the 90s. That's what his asking price was. And it wasn't just the movies, it was him as a person. Jim Carrey in an interview was an event. The man had this energy that you just could not fake. He'd walk on a talk show set and immediately the whole room would change. He was loud, he was physical, he was unpredictable, and you could feel it through the screen. You knew when you were watching Jim Carrey. There was nobody else like him. Now, here's where things started getting strange, and I need you to really pay attention to this part because it matters later. Around the mid-2010s, Jim Carrey started saying things publicly that made people look at him sideways. He went on interviews and said multiple times that Jim Carrey doesn't exist. He said the name, the personality, the famous version of himself that the world knows, all of it was a character. He said he had been playing a role his entire career and that the real person underneath was someone nobody had ever actually met. He sat down with reporters and said things like, "There is no me," and "Jim Carrey is a concept, not a person." Now, at the time, most people just assumed he was going through some kind of spiritual awakening. Maybe he got into meditation, maybe he read too many self-help books. People joked about it online and moved on. But looking back at it now, with everything that's happened since, those statements hit completely different. Because if the real Jim Carrey was telling us that he was about to disappear, and then he actually did disappear, and then someone who looked slightly off showed up in his place, those old interviews start sounding less like philosophy and more like a warning. And he didn't just talk in riddles either. Jim Carrey went on Jimmy Kimmel Live on national television and straight up accused the entertainment industry of being connected to the Illuminati. He wasn't joking. He wasn't doing a bit. He looked Kimmel in the eye and started throwing up hand signs and talking about secret societies and the control structure in Hollywood. The audience laughed because they thought it was comedy, but if you go back and watch that clip now, he was dead serious. His face was serious. His tone shifted halfway through. That was a man trying to tell people something. Then, in 2018, Jim Carrey stood on the BAFTA stage in London in front of the very people he was talking about and called out Hollywood directly. He talked about the industry being built on lies and performance and manipulation, and the room got quiet. You could see people in the audience shifting in their seats. Nobody was laughing. Nobody was clapping. It was tense. And Jim Carrey did not care. He just kept going. Now think about that for a second. A man with one of the biggest platforms in entertainment starts publicly calling out the industry that made him rich and famous. He's going on talk shows and award stages and saying things that the people running Hollywood absolutely do not want to be said out loud. What do you think happens to somebody like that? Because right after all of that, Jim Carrey started disappearing. Fewer movies, fewer public appearances, fewer interviews. He went from being one of the most visible entertainers on the planet to basically invisible. He took up painting, he moved away from the spotlight, the roles dried up or he stopped accepting them depending on who you ask. And for years, nobody really questioned it that much because celebrities step away sometimes. People take breaks, it happens. But then February 2026 happened and everything blew up. Jim Carrey, or at least someone presented as Jim Carrey, showed up at the Césars Awards in Paris. The Césars are basically the French version of the Oscars, and he was there to accept a Lifetime Achievement honor. On paper, that's a beautiful moment, right? A legend being recognized, everybody should be celebrating. Except the second that footage hit the internet, people lost their minds, and not in a good way. The man who walked across that stage in Paris did not look like Jim Carrey. I'm not talking about normal aging. Everybody gets older, everybody's face changes over time. That's life. But this was different. People who have been watching Jim Carrey since In Living Color said they did not recognize this person. His entire face structure looked altered. His cheekbones sat differently, his jawline was different, his skin had a different texture and tone to it. And then there were the eyes. Jim Carrey's eyes have always been one of his most recognizable features. Dark, intense, expressive, kind of wild-looking. That's part of what made his comedy work so well. You could see the crazy in his eyes and you loved it. But the man at the Césars Award had pale, almost greenish-colored eyes. Noticeably lighter, noticeably different. And people caught that immediately. His voice was different too, softer, quieter, more restrained. Jim Carrey has never been restrained a day in his life. This is a man who threw his entire body into everything he did, every interview, every appearance, every scene. That chaotic, unpredictable, electric energy was his signature, and it was completely absent in Paris. The man on that stage was calm, measured, almost robotic in how controlled he seemed. And he spoke French, fluently. Now, maybe Jim Carrey has been learning French for years and nobody knew about it. That's possible. But combined with everything else, people online were asking, when exactly did Jim Carrey become fluent in French? Because it never came up once in 30-plus years of interviews and public appearances. Now here's where this whole thing went from weird to genuinely unsettling. Shortly after the Caesar footage went viral, a makeup artist and professional celebrity impersonator named Alexis Stone posted on Instagram and made a claim that shook the entire internet. He said that Jim Carrey at the ceremony was actually him, not the real Jim Carrey. Him, Alexis Stone, in a prosthetic mask. And this isn't just some random person on TikTok making stuff up for views. Alexis Stone has built an entire career on hyper-realistic celebrity transformations. This man has appeared in public as various famous people using silicone prosthetics, custom dental work, wigs, colored contacts, the whole setup. He has documented this work extensively across his social media platforms. He's done photo shoots and real-world public appearances where people could not tell the difference between him and the actual celebrity he was impersonating. This is what he does professionally. So when Alexis Stone posted photos of what he said were the prosthetics used for the Jim Carrey look, complete with the facial molds, the skin texture overlays, the matching wig, and even shots with the Eiffel Tower in the background to prove he was actually in Paris, people took it seriously. He wasn't vague about it either. He said it outright. That was not Jim Carrey on that stage. That was him. Now, Jim Carrey's publicists came out almost immediately and shut it down. They said that was absolutely the real Jim Carrey, that Alexis Stone was just trying to get attention, and that was the end of the discussion. Case closed. But it wasn't case closed for a lot of people, because the question that kept coming up was this: why would a professional impersonator with a legitimate career and a real reputation risk all of that by making a false claim this big? If he's lying, he's basically destroying his own credibility for no reason. That doesn't make sense. And some people online started suggesting that maybe Alexis Stone was actually brought in to play the role deliberately and then told to come forward publicly so that the story would become about the impersonator drama instead of the real question, which is, where is the actual Jim Carrey? Think about that. If you want to distract people from asking, is that really Jim Carrey, the easiest way to do it is to create a whole separate controversy about a makeup artist claiming credit. Now everybody's arguing about Alexis Stone instead of investigating what actually happened. And on top of all of that, footage came out of Jim Carrey signing autographs at the same event in Paris. People who follow autograph authentication, and yes, that is a real community of people, compared the signature from the Caesar Awards to Jim Carrey's known signature from decades of signings. And according to multiple people who do this for a living, the handwriting was completely different. The stroke patterns, the letter formations, the pressure points, none of it matched. Now, can a person's signature change over time? Absolutely. But combined with the face changes, the eye color, the voice, the energy, the French fluency, and the impersonator claims, people were saying this is just too many coincidences stacking up. So where does Joe Rogan fit into all of this? Joe Rogan has been talking about this situation across several conversations and clips that have been circulating online, and what he's been pointing to is not just Jim Carrey specifically, but the pattern. Joe has talked extensively on his podcast about how the entertainment industry deals with people who become problems, people who start talking too much, people who start exposing things that are supposed to stay hidden. And his argument is that Jim Carrey is not the first celebrity to speak out against Hollywood and then suddenly become a different person. Rogan has pointed out that there are multiple examples of high-profile entertainers who challenged the system and then went quiet, or changed dramatically in their appearance and behavior, or just vanished from public life entirely. And he's not saying all of these people were literally cloned in a lab somewhere. What he's saying is that the industry has mechanisms for dealing with people who become inconvenient. And whatever those mechanisms are, they work. Because the people who speak out the loudest always seem to end up either silenced, discredited, or replaced by a version of themselves that suddenly plays by the rules. And with Jim Carrey specifically, the timeline is hard to ignore. He starts calling out the Illuminati and secret Hollywood power structures. He says publicly that Jim Carrey is a character, not a real person. He delivers pointed speeches at major award shows criticizing the very industry that surrounds him. And then, gradually, he fades. The movies stop, the appearances dry up, the man who was once impossible to shut up goes almost completely silent. And then when he finally resurfaces at a major public event, he looks different, sounds different, acts different, signs his name different, and has skills nobody knew about. Now, let's talk about what the experts are actually saying, because this isn't just internet speculation anymore. Multiple board-certified plastic surgeons have independently reviewed the Caesar Awards footage and shared their professional assessments. According to several of them, changes visible on this man's face are consistent with what appears to be a brow lift, aggressive upper eyelid surgery, cheek implants or fillers, jawline restructuring, and heavy Botox throughout the forehead and around the eyes. And while any one of those procedures on its own wouldn't be unusual for a man in his 60s, the combination and the degree of change reportedly go beyond what most surgeons would consider typical cosmetic maintenance. Some of them have said on record that the overall result looks less like the same person with work done and more like a different face built to resemble the original. Body language analysts who have studied Jim Carrey's movement patterns across decades of footage have also weighed in. And while they noted that some of his classic mannerisms were present at the Caesar ceremony, the overall energy, the timing of his gestures, the way he held his body, and the rhythm of his speech were all reportedly off. Not dramatically off, but consistently off, in a way that, according to them, doesn't fully align with just aging or cosmetic surgery. And the eye color thing is not going away. Jim Carrey has hazel eyes. Hazel eyes can shift depending on lighting, clothing color, and even mood. That's a documented thing. But the pale greenish tone visible in the Paris footage is far enough from his established eye color that even skeptical viewers are having a hard time explaining it away. So let me just put this whole thing together so you can see the full picture. You've got a man who spent years calling out the most powerful people in entertainment, a man who told the world on camera that his own identity was fake, a man who slowly vanished from public life right after making those statements, and then a man who reappears at a major ceremony, looking different, sounding different, acting different, signing his name different, and speaking a language he was never publicly known to speak. You've got a professional impersonator stepping forward and claiming that was actually him on that stage. You've got plastic surgeons saying the physical changes go beyond normal aging and surgery. You've got body language experts saying the mannerisms don't fully match. You've got Joe Rogan connecting this to a broader pattern of celebrities who challenge the industry and then somehow become different people. Now, is this definitive proof of human cloning? No, and I want to be honest about that. Human cloning as a confirmed, publicly acknowledged practice does not officially exist. The science, as far as what's been disclosed to the public, is not there yet. But what a lot of people are asking, and what Joe Rogan has essentially been getting at, is whether the official explanation, that this is just a man getting older and maybe having some cosmetic work, actually holds up when you stack it against everything else. Because there are a whole lot of things about this situation that do not add up. And whether the answer is cloning, a body double, an industry-orchestrated replacement, or something nobody has even considered yet, the one thing that is hard to deny is that the Jim Carrey who stood on that stage in Paris in 2026 does not match the Jim Carrey the world has known for over 30 years. And the responses from his team have not been enough to put this to rest. I'm not here to tell you what to believe, that's on you, but I wanted to make sure you had everything in front of you, every piece of this puzzle, so you can make up your own mind, because this conversation is not going away. If anything, it's getting louder every single day. So let me ask you this. Do you think that was the real Jim Carrey in Paris, or do you think something else is going on here? Drop your answer in the comments because I genuinely want to hear what you think. And if you've noticed other celebrities who seem like they've been replaced or changed overnight, put those names in the comments too, because we might need to do a whole series on this. If you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell because the next video is going even deeper into the Hollywood replacement rabbit hole. And trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming. Until next time, I'll catch y'all in the next one.